You know that feeling when you decide to read the Old Testament and you're just cruising through Genesis, but then you hit this wall? I'm talking about books like Joshua, Judges, and Kings. It's this massive, sprawling history. And yeah, it's full of some incredible moments, but let's be real, it's also got a lot of confusing and sometimes pretty unsettling stuff. It can make you stop and think, am I even doing this right?
This quote from the scholar David M. Howard Jr. just hits the nail on the head, doesn't it? These books are both inviting and forbidding. On one hand, they're inviting because, hey, these are the stories we grew up with, some of the most famous characters ever. But on the other hand, they feel totally forbidding, like this ancient locked room that we just don't have the key for.
And this paradox is so real. I mean, look at the inviting side. You've got David, Samson, Ruth, stories of friendship and triumph that are just woven into the fabric of our culture. But then you flip the page and bam, you hit the forbidding stuff. This ancient context that's so hard to grasp, these complex rituals, the sheer volume of it all, and yeah, that violence that can be really tough to read. It's no wonder so many of us get lost in the weeds.
And that brings us to the question that kind of changes the whole game. If these books aren't meant to be read like a modern history textbook or just some dry list of facts, then what are they? Because figuring that out is the key that unlocks this whole part of the Bible.
The answer comes down to a word that sounds way more complicated than it actually is: historiography. All it means is the writing of history. See, history isn't just a raw video feed of everything that happened. It's about an author selecting specific details and weaving them together to tell a story and make a point. Seriously, think of it like a documentary filmmaker. They don't show you every second of footage. They carefully pick the clips that tell the story they want to tell. The biblical authors, they were doing the exact same thing.
And you know what? This isn't some secret we have to decode. The writers tell us this is what they're doing. Take a look at this quote from the New Testament. The author John flat out says, "Look, a ton of other stuff happened, but I chose to write down these specific things for a reason, so that you may believe." That's the whole ballgame right there. It's selective, purposeful storytelling. And that's the same mindset we need to bring to the Old Testament history books.
So, this leads us to our first huge mental shift. We need to stop seeing these books as just history and start reading them as history as literature. It means we've got to look past just the what happened and start asking, what's the story the author is telling through what happened? So let's break down what this literary style actually looks like, because it's a pretty fascinating mix.
So what kind of literature are we talking about? Well, it's this wild combination. First, it's incredibly realistic. It doesn't pull any punches or airbrush its heroes. But at the same time, it's also romantic. And I mean that in the classic sense. It loves the dramatic, the miraculous, the larger-than-life stuff. And maybe most important of all, it's response-evoking. This isn't just a story for your entertainment. It's designed to persuade you, to make you think, and to call for a response.
And let's just camp out on that realism for a second, because it is so powerful. I mean, think about it. These aren't flawless superheroes from some ancient myth. The Bible's main characters are deeply, deeply flawed people. You've got Abraham lying about his wife, Moses with a major anger problem. David does some pretty terrible things. These giants of the faith are shown to us, warts and all. And honestly, that's what makes them so much more compelling and, well, human. Okay, so this is where the rubber meets the road. We've got all this theory about historiography and literary style, but what does that actually do? How does it change the way you and I actually sit down and read these books day to day? What does it look like in practice? Okay, check this out. This is a fantastic example from the book of Judges. There's this big Israelite victory. In chapter 4, you get the prose account, the straight-up matter-of-fact report. God subdued the Canaanite king. It's the view from the ground. But then you turn the page to chapter 5 and you get a song about the exact same event. And suddenly the language completely changes. From the heavens, the stars fought. Whoa, this isn't a contradiction. It's the author using two different literary styles, prose and poetry, to give us a much bigger, deeper picture of what was really going on, both on earth and in the heavens.
All right, so when we start putting all these things together, the historiography, the literary style, the gritty realism, what we end up with is a powerful new framework for reading. This is the tool that lets us move past seeing a jumble of disconnected stories and start to see the single unified picture the authors wanted us to see all along.
And this process totally transforms how you read. You start out at step 1 with what feels like a messy box of puzzle pieces, just random facts and stories. But then you move to step 2. You start asking, why did the author include this? What literary tools are they using? And And that's when step 3 happens. The pieces start to click into place, and this huge, unified story about God's plan starts to emerge right out of the chaos.
And that scholar, David Howard, just says it so perfectly here. When we only pick these books apart for historical facts, he says we're left with a dismembered corpse. What a powerful image. But when we read them as the whole, complete literary works they were meant to be, we don't get a corpse. We get a living organism, something with a pulse, with vitality and depth, and a powerful living message.
So, here's the challenge. The next time you open one of these ancient historical books, try not to get lost in the individual trees. Don't get bogged down in every single detail. Instead, take a step back and ask yourself, what's the whole forest here? What is the grand, purposeful story that the author is trying to tell me? Because I promise you, learning to see that forest, well, that might just change everything.